What's up, advocates? I'm not in my normal home studio, as you can see. We've got a very, very special show today. We've taken the time to sit with Chip Merlin of the Merlin Law Group. For those of you that don't know, Chip has been practicing property damage litigation, insurance law for over 40 years now. He's also the writer of the Merlin Blog. The Merlin Law Group is all over 40 states throughout the entire country, and he's practiced all kinds of claims, from Hurricane Katrina to the Surfside towers that fell down to Hurricane Andrew. He helped start FAPIA, the Florida Association of Public Insurance Adjuster. I mean, this man is well respected in the industry. He's been around for a very long time, and thankfully he's taken the time out to sit with me and really talk about some very heated topics in regards to Senate bill changes, in regards to the future of public adjusting and insurance claims and policy, and a little bit on the Surfside towers as well. We really cut into a lot of really interesting topics, so I think you're going to enjoy this one. So make sure you check it out. Ready? In 3, 2, 1. So Chip, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man.
Well, it's great to be here. I've seen quite a few of your educational videos, and congratulations. You seem to have a great following, and the content's excellent. We're trying.
I think it's much needed, I think, in our industry. You know, the reason why I started it personally was really because, frankly, and when I didn't have any training. I was thrown out there with the sharks, like, just go ahead and sign them. Go ahead and find them, go ahead and sign them. And I was just sort of figuring out as I go. And then luckily, after a couple of years, I did find a mentor, experienced public adjuster, who was there for me, who was able to answer all my questions and so on and so forth. So I realized that it was definitely a need in the industry for, I don't blame it so much on the firms, but, you know, most of the owners of these firms, they're out there doing what they got to do. They don't have time to train their people. So I wanted to be a source for people to go to where they can get some training.
Yeah, it's a big issue with respect to public adjusting. A lot of the companies put their adjusters through all kinds of training, and if you go through that and then you become a public adjuster, you're that much further ahead. But what if you don't? And there's really nothing out there. As a matter of fact, we started the whole idea of having an apprentice program for new public adjusters at one time, just to force some training before people would go out and start public adjusting. Literally, I mean, there were people that were massage therapists one month, the next month they're public adjusters and have no clue what to do. And anybody can pass a test. My girlfriend Denise was out in Texas. She said, let me see how hard this is. She studied for half a day, goes in, she passes the public adjuster licensing exam. She's never practiced public adjusting. Maybe she's hung out with me a little bit too much. But I think there's a big need for the education, and it's changed a lot in the last 10 years.
Do you remember the first year of the apprenticeship in Florida? Do you remember what year it was?
Oh my gosh, it was after 2006, 7, I think, somewhere right in there, right?
I can tell you, 2009.
2009?
You know why? That was my first year as a public adjuster. I was looking into it the year before, and then all of a sudden I decide to do this, and they tell me about this 1-year apprenticeship at the time. Now it's 6 months.
Yeah. Well, I really felt it was needed. I helped, I mean, it's been a while now, I helped push that through. It was, we went from a 600 or so public adjusters at the time to 2004 hurricane season hit. We had 4 hurricanes. Yeah. Then the next year we had Wilma. And all this work, and people were going down and taking licensing. At the time, it was an open book test, so anybody could pass.
That's one of the reasons why I was going to do it. I was like, all right, I can do this.
Right, we went up to over 3,000 public adjusters in the state of Florida, and I think there was a concern, especially in the leadership of the Florida Association of Public Insurance Adjusters, that we can't allow people to go out and do this if it engages the public trust, which it does. And so there needs to be something to help teach somebody or mentor somebody, because we need more qualifications for people to do this that are more practical.
So one thing I didn't know, and I found out while reading your book, Pay Up, and I didn't know that you were responsible for the start of the Florida Association of Public Adjusters.
Yeah, it was an interesting day in December of 1992. I got off an airplane with a couple other public adjusters who went to the NAPIA meeting, and there was literally almost fistfights between the Florida insurance regulators and NAPIA members. And there was accusations of fraud that were going on, accusations that they're going to have to write out public adjusting from being a licensed profession in the state of Florida. And some of the leaders of NAPIA came and approached me about doing something about it. Can we form an association in Florida? So that was the real genesis of how it started. I then approached a friend of mine, attorney Doug Gross, and said, I'm going to do this, and Doug will help, and we can go and do this together. And so we did. We had the first meeting, I think, in January, and then follow-up meetings after that. It was small. I think we only had 40-something original founding members, but now the Florida Association of Public Insurance Adjusters is the largest public adjuster association that meets on a regular basis in the United States, and it's actually a very professional organization.
It is very professional. I'm a part of it myself. I've been a part of it. Pretty much I became a public adjuster, so I definitely enjoy it. You mentioned the fist fighting and the accusations of fraud and getting rid of public adjusters, and it sounds like a lot hasn't changed.
No, really, I was thinking about that as I was talking about it. Yeah, the insurance industry and the insurance regulators are still saying that there's all kinds of accusations of fraud. And so, I mean, in that case, there was, without a doubt, there were some issues that were going on by a group of public adjusters that had come down from New York and did certain things. They got arrested. That doesn't mean that 98% of everybody else doing this stuff is a crook. But it's the same type of allegations we hear over and over again. Certainly insurance company adjusters, most of them, if they're being honest, will tell you we don't like dealing with public adjusters because they always criticize what our work is and what our estimate is, and sometimes we find it difficult to work with public adjusters. And so, there is, difficulty that goes on, and when you get into the claims practice and the operation guides that insurance companies have, and you only find this out in the bad faith cases, I mean, they literally will train adjusters on how to interact with public adjusters, how to keep their own policyholders from engaging with public adjusters and even signing contracts. So that goes on all the time, as unethical as what it is.
Wow.
But, yeah.
Well, you mention in your book that insurance companies use the fraud allegations to get what they want in regards to the Senate, in regards to what goes on behind the scenes with law changes and so on and so forth, where they try to make it like, hey, be careful with these bad guys because they're out here committing fraud. Be careful with these other bad guys, and we're actually doing this for you, when ultimately we all know it's all these things aren't just hurting our industry, but ultimately they're hurting the consumer.
Well, first of all, any fraud's wrong, and there can be abuse of various types of claims in the insurance system. I mean, that's just the way it is, and we are facing some of that right now, and I think it's important for the policyholder side, the policyholder advocates, to not put their head in the sand and really look at what's going on and be honest about the elephant in the room that might be there, as well as to stand up against people that are abusing the insurance system. So, but it doesn't mean that it's just open season on everybody, and there really should be instances and concrete proof examples of the wrongdoing and what's going on. So, we're in this constant debate right now where the insurance industry is always going, it's complete fraud, or it's always the lawyers that are doing this. And you don't hear a lot coming back from our side, but the truth is there's examples every single day that I can show of insurance companies abusing their own customers, and the true need for public adjusters and people that stand up against some of the things that are going on. I mean, the managed repair is
not managed care.
Yeah, but it's very similar.
Right.
I mean, it's the health insurance industry took over doctors essentially, and now they mandate how doctors treat you. How's that really work for everybody? Not too good, I would suggest.
Right.
And many good doctors have left the field saying it's not the same way it used to be. People get nickeled and dimed over and over about the amount that their own health insurance carriers want to pay for. That you can't get all the prescription medication you need because they say it's just not necessary. You don't qualify, while your doctor's saying it is necessary and you need it. A lot of people just go and pay out of pocket for it. Right. Well, if it's not working in the healthcare industry, how do you think it's going to work in the repair industry now that the property insurers are trying to do this? And when we go out and we look at what many of those preferred vendors go do, the quality of the workmanship is just not there. And there's nothing else you can say about it, but Well, they aren't getting paid enough to go do it, and they won't stand up, to it. So I applaud those contractors that don't give into the, let's go ahead and give into the volume and give into getting profits, because most of them in the long run come out at saying, I'm not making any more money than I did anyway, and they're really getting pressure to do substandard work. So, as a matter of fact, that the current president of FAPIA used to be a preferred vendor and quit because he said, I'm just not going to sell my soul to the devil, for it. So it's an issue. I think it's one of the things that we have to address coming up. It's a big issue.
And it's how they sell it too, right? I love how they sell it in this nice little packet with people who are smiling and they're so happy, and this is what we're going to do to you. We're going to bring in all the people that you need. You don't have to go out there and find someone. We'll take care of it for you. All you have to do is pay your deductible, and everything else is taken care of. When people don't realize, that don't understand the insurance industry, that yes, those people are normally being underpaid. They're restricted to very strict guidelines as to what they can and what they can't do. And then the managed repair program itself, not for mitigation, but for the actual doing the work after, people don't understand that you're kind of stuck with, it's bad enough having to deal with the insurance company throughout the insurance claims process, but then to have to deal with them also throughout the entire repair process as well, where you're having to go through the middleman, through the adjuster to get to your contractor. Any little upgrade that, God forbid, you want to do, you're going to have to pay additional for now. And it's like it's just, you have no control over anything. And I've yet to hear about a good experience with it. I actually settled a case not too long ago where the managed repair program just went in there and just debacled this place. You should have seen the texture on this wall. You should have seen the mismatching paint that was going on. You should have seen the way all the floors were just not installed correctly. And I attacked them, and we went after it, and we ended up avoiding litigation. We're able to settle for a cash amount.
Well, Vince, for the people that are watching this that are public adjusters and wanting to know where their industry is going to, I would suggest that they're going to have to get used to dealing with managed repair. I don't think it's going to go away. I think the insurance industry is hell-bent on really trying to push that. And if it's true, then what public adjusters are going to be doing in the future, at least for part of their work, is not so much adjusting work, but also being the critique individual of the construction that's going on and the substandard construction that's going on by insurance companies. So I think that we're, got to keep your eyes open what's going on in trend. That absolutely is a big trend. And so what I've been telling a lot of public adjusters, and it's what makes it such a demanding field, is you've got to really understand how construction works. You have to understand the manufacturer's specifications. You've got to follow manufacturer specifications. It's the only way to do it properly in terms of both the labor as well as the materials, that are being placed into the structures. And so it's it's a changing field you've got, but that's one that I would suggest a lot of public adjusters spend a lot of time on and start doing things with the specifications. And Construction Specifications Institute is a great place to start, so you can really understand what those specifications are that contractors are supposed to be doing during a repair or a reconstruction.
That does lead me to one of the questions that I had. Where do you see the future of, most of the audience is public adjusters that are watching, where do you see the future of this industry?
It's becoming more difficult. I think the policies are becoming more and more limited with respect to the coverages that are the typical type of losses, so that on water damage claims we're finding a lot of limitations and less, and then less people hire the preferred contractors and less certain notification.
How do they get away with that, Chip? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's one that really, when I first started to see that, when Citizens was doing that, and they were giving you this ultimatum, well, we'll value your $100,000 claim if you use our people, but if you don't, we're only going to pay you 10. How is that allowed? How does that happen? That just seems like very mafia of you're forced to do this. How does that happen?
Well, if you think about it, the Citizens is the insurer of last resort in the state of Florida, so if you can't get other private insurance, that's where you go as a customer. Citizens, being a quasi-governmental entity, is not typical insurance, and what they do is go to the regulator saying, look, we need to change our policy because we don't want to be paying for this, so we can keep rates, even though they're high, lower, and we're going to provide what I call Swiss cheese or cheap insurance. So you start getting these gaps in insurance coverage that are first in the state of Florida being promoted by Citizens. Now, I don't know whether or not other insurance companies are telling citizens, hey, why don't you go do this year and get the regulator to approve it? Because once that happens,
we're going to do it.
Then we're going to go do it too.
Which is what happens.
And you kind of see this, domino effect that happens year after year where the Department of Insurance gives in to the governmental entity, Citizens Property Insurance, and then it's followed along by the private marketplace. But you see it all the time. It's my belief that Citizens almost acts as a quasi-sounding board for the entire insurance industry. It is very cozy. They're very cozy with all the regulators. And there's the policies in Florida are some of the worst policies in the entire United States, as a result of it. I mean, that's where we've really gone. So customer protections within the policy itself, have dropped, dramatically over the last dozen years or so.
Tell me more about the lobbyists and the things that go on behind the scenes, whatever you can say. If it's something that you don't feel comfortable with, then that's totally fine. I bring it up because you do also bring it up in your book as well, where you mention a case, if you remember, I'm sure you do, State Farm case where it was like a class action lawsuit, and it was like I don't know how many billions of dollars, and then they ended up voting or putting money in, not money in the pockets, but investing in one of the judges' campaigns to get elected, and then ultimately that was a deciding factor of some kind of thing that passed. I don't know, do you remember what I'm talking about?
I remember the entire chapter. So in my book, I talked about how there was a rigged Illinois Supreme Court that got that way because of the influence that State Farm and other insurance companies had through the Chamber of Commerce and other types of organizations that supported a judge who started running to become a Supreme Court judge because they needed him and his vote regarding a multi-billion-dollar class action lawsuit regarding aftermarket parts regarding State Farm.
Cars.
And so it was a car case, and it was going to the Illinois Supreme Court, and they got that judge elected. And sure enough, the result was not good for the policyholders. Well, after all that got done, the parties that lost then went back and sued State Farm and a number of other entities for a RICO violation. So this is really racketeering, and a federal judge laid out the entire case, allowed the case to go on. It was
then about
the trial, and then they settled off hundreds of millions of dollars was the settlement. It was still a savings to State Farm.
Yeah, for sure.
The billions that were in the class action case. But I think it goes to show the depth and the power as a result of money and the lobbying that can be done, and the propaganda that insurance companies can put up into the public spectrum. Of course, who's going to be against it? I mean, policyholders aren't going to come out of their pocket and say, oh, let's go ahead and try to defeat the propaganda. There is no other side. So it's what they have done, and it's very strong. And it's strong in the state of Florida as well. I mean, we've been very fortunate, I think, to have concerned legislators. I get up there. A lot of policyholders that our clients don't know that we're advocating for them long before that we're our clients. I mean, we are really their advocate up there and working hard, and there's some other good attorneys too. I wish there were a lot more. There aren't. The truth is, there's just not, and there's always seems to be a few of us that are up there year after year, fighting the good fight. But I have met a lot of good legislators that want to do the right thing, and it's difficult though, because for every me, there's 20 lobbyists that are also have their ear with the incessant, what you mentioned, fraud or statistics that are made up that come from God knows where, up there, and there are some legitimate concerns that we have and that the insurance industry should have. I mean, the truth of the matter is we all need an insurance industry that's making profits, and we need sustainable profits for them so that they are not about to go broke. It's the issues of them not making profits that's bad for them, and it's bad for policyholders as well too. And it needs to be addressed. And so I think there has been some legitimate needs for some changes in the laws. I know it's not going to be good for a number of individuals and entities. I know contractors, the Senate bill that just passed in the special session essentially did away with a lot of AOBs, but there's also a lot of AOB abuse. I mean, it's just, I don't know what anybody can say about it, and the legislators say it too, and the roofers, most of the roofers I know will talk about it as well, but there's a small, it's like one of our attorneys said, how do 80% of all these lawsuits get filed by just a few law firms and a few, actors that are doing this over and over and over again, and it just, there's issues that came up that frankly ruin it for everybody.
Right.
So, we're the contractors are, and I believe it's going to be constitutional what they pass. There's a legal challenge to it. That aspect, I don't think that there's any particular right that people have to have their attorney's fees paid for by the insurance industry. We're fortunate in Florida that we have that statute that protects policyholders, but obviously it was taken away from contractors because you can't assign that right to third parties any longer.
How long do you think that lasts? Now that that's been passed, how long do you think that lasts here in the future?
What do you mean? You mean
attorney fees and cost statute?
Well, I think it'll be under attack next year. I already know it's going to be under attack. A lot of people have already said it's going to be under attack.
It's a concern of mine.
Frankly, it's already been under attack. I mean, right now we have to file a notice of intent.
Yep.
So
if you don't, that's it. Your case is done.
I mean, unlike any other contract that you've got in the state of Florida, if somebody doesn't pay you, doesn't do what they're supposed to do, dadgummit, you can go down there and hire an attorney and go sue them to go make them do what they were supposed to do by a promise. Now the insurance industry has got, well, yeah, we broke the promise, but before you sue us, you have to do all these other various things first too. I mean, only in the state of Florida would this come up, and actually was copied somewhat by the state of Texas, but not as much. Here it's any type of loss for any first-party property claim, you got to file this intent to sue. So they get an extra time to take a look at it before they get sued. And if you don't get a certain amount in a recovery at the end, you may or may not get your attorney's fees.
Right.
So, I mean, there's been a significant impediment to getting paid attorney's fees that eventually will come out of the policyholders, pocket. Even if you win, if you don't win enough, you're not going to get your attorney's fees paid. So, and maybe that's we're going to see how that legislation works. I think it's going to take years before we see the ultimate result of it, because it's really just starting to come effect with the newer policies right now.
So a question I get asked a lot is this a good industry for me to get into? And we've already touched on it, but I'm going to just elaborate a little bit. Since 2009, when I first became a public adjuster, I have to be honest, I was always worried about the future of the industry. I was always worried if public adjusters were going to still be around because we're always being under attack. What I try to tell the new guys that come in and the questions that I get is I tell them that. I tell them all the time, like, it's okay, we're always going to be around because frankly, there needs to be an advocate. I'm convinced in my head that there needs to be an advocate when you're going up against big bad insurance companies. Are they going to make the policies tighter? Are they going to make our laws and restrictions, much more limited? Yeah, I'm sure that's going to continue to happen. But I do feel that a public adjuster is a necessity and does need to be out there to just advocate for the small person. With that said, you mentioned MRPs and you mentioned limits and stuff like that. I mean, what does insurance look like 20 years from now? Like, is there just going to be nothing that's going to be covered? Like, what is there just zero coverage for everything, or what?
20 years is a long time to make a guess at, but I can give you pretty good guesses about what's going to be 5 years from now.
Okay.
At least the trends that are going to go. That they're, without a doubt, the current trend is toward managed repair and insurance companies trying to do the repair process themselves because they think they can do it for less money than what they pay out in claims. Now, whether or not that's going to, pan out or not for them, we're going to go see. Certainly, I'm not going to just sit back and let them go do it and then do shoddy workmanship for policyholders.
Right.
So, and I think I've indicated already that doesn't mean the industry of public adjusting.
We have a process behind those.
You're just going to have to do something different, and you're going to have to learn how to process those claims.
Which is what I explain to people.
And I think that's important. Even in our law firm, we're spending a lot more time on that. The issues with respect to policies that provide full coverage.
Just adequate coverage.
There's a lot of gaps in coverage that are getting worse, and so long as the regulators are going to allow insurance companies to write out coverages, which they do. So the insurance companies are always competing on price because what happens is everybody wants the least expensive insurance. historically, there was a reason why there was a standard fire insurance policy. That was to prevent insurance
State
companies
Farm.
from selling that stupid cheap insurance that's almost worthless. And over 140 years ago, we were having standard fire insurance policies. So there's a consumer movement now that we're actively supporting regarding a minimum all-risk insurance policy, that you can't go less than this. It's just not right.
Yeah, but then they put in the endorsements and the exclusions. That...
But again, that's the reason why you would have a minimum standard of what they are.
Okay.
And I'm hopeful that legislation, United Policyholders has been pushing, very hard on that particular program, and we support United Policyholders. And any time I get a chance, I talk about this, gap in insurance that is going on. I still think until that happens that there will be growing and greater amount of gaps in the insurance coverage as insurers try to both compete against each other and pay less on claims through any kind of artificial means. If your roof's over a certain age, we're only going to pay actual cash value, or they have a schedule that's going to go down. We're only going to pay up to $10,000 on water or $5,000 on water. We're not going to pay to tear out parts of your floor anymore if your pipe bursts. We're only going to pay to replace that portion of the pipe, but to get there, that's going to come out of your own pocket now. There's just been massive changes in the policies. Even, of course, I've been doing this now for 40 years, but the policy 40 years ago, at least with respect to the coverage provided in the residential policy, was much greater with fewer exclusions. And today it has just many more exclusions. So we've seen a deterioration of the product that eventually has got to stop. And I think there's going to be, over the next 5 years, a lot more debate at the National Association of Insurance Commissioners about what this insurance product should look like, and the wording that goes into it is going to be looked at. I think it has to be looked at in far greater detail by regulators, so that we don't have this continued process of insurance companies doing the craziest things in the world. Like in California, we insure fire, but not a wildfire. They literally try to put an exclusion. We don't cover wildfire.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. So I mean, and without even approval from regulators. But how many people don't know that? I mean, and so this wording is extraordinarily important. It means so much, because that is the contract, and you can change little small things. Even a word of we might cover all kinds of various things, but we don't cover them if they're man-made. So like the blasting, that goes on
in Miami.
But if it's man-made, we don't cover that. Really? That's you're taking 90% of all the claims out by doing that.
Yeah.
So, and it gives a competitive advantage to those insurance companies. Now say, hey, come, we sell great stuff, or they have a stupid commercial, or the Geico, or make fun of various losses. Come by, we have great insurance. Really? But you don't cover this, and these other guys over here do.
I heard there was
and nobody's going to read that small print. They don't even give it to you in advance.
They don't even give it to you. That's the thing I was just going to say.
You can go to the supermarket and you can pick out what your apple and orange are going to be, and you can compare them right there. You can't compare insurance
No,
policies.
they give you just they give you your limits and how much it costs. That's pretty much it. They don't give you anything else.
But I think that there's a need, and you stressed it. I mean, I spent a lot of time up with regulators, and this goes back, has been recent, but 15, 20 years ago, trying to get the code of ethics with respect to public adjusting, what they ought to be. And I made various suggestions for legislation that needs to happen for the profession, just to make certain it's at a higher level. I think if the leadership of public adjusters will always try to think of our main goal is to serve policyholders the very best we can. And if you're constantly trying to raise that bar, that's the best way to safeguard the profession. It's not, and I've been pushing that, same thing with lawyers and everybody else, but if you really want to put yourself on people need us, you then got to raise your own bar for what the standards of conduct are going to be.
There's nothing that angers me more than a public adjuster telling me that he walks away from MRPs or he walks away from different limits and he just I'm like, dude, like the people still need our help. Like that's what we're here for. Like you can't just say, well, you have a managed repair program, I'm not going to get paid, so you go ahead and handle it yourself. If a loss occurred, the claim needs to be made and you need to help them fight it. And chances are, we have a process behind the MRP where we give them such hell that eventually they're just like, okay, fine, they cut a check. It doesn't happen all the time, but you still have to work it. You have to work it to a point because that's what we do. We represent the policyholder.
Well, I think that's what public adjusters are supposed to do.
Yes.
And again, it's a changing market. It's a very, very dynamic profession.
Yeah.
Everything, just the way you go about doing losses today versus the way you would do them 30 years ago is significantly different. The way public adjusters practice is different. I do worry about people that are in it just for the money, though. I do worry about people just trying to, quote, leverage up. That's the big thing. I'll go lever and scale up, and that's what everybody talks about. So, versus really trying to do a great quality product for the clients that you've got. And so I thought that the legislature did a great thing by requiring that if you take on somebody as a client, you got to have your estimate done in a certain amount of time.
I like that too.
It prevents people from taking on too much work and not delivering and delaying things.
And vice versa too. They have to give us their estimate within like 7 days after we request it too. I kind of like that. So
insurance companies should have been doing that to begin with if they're acting in good faith. I don't know. There shouldn't have been a need for a piece of legislation that way, but had we had stronger regulation by insurance commissioner, those types of practices wouldn't happen.
I also like the thing that they passed where there's gonna be a lot of investigating as to the numbers behind everything, as to how many claims involve a public adjuster, how many claims go to litigation, how many claims are underpaid, how many claims I forgot what it's called, but there's like some kind of division that's going to be doing all that. It's going to take some years to really get the numbers back, but I thought that was interesting too.
It's interesting. I don't know how it's going to be, used, and I don't know, numbers.
Depends who's behind it, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's sort of like Insurance Commissioner Altmaier and I. Well, he had words from me because I essentially indicated that the statistics regarding closed claims that he had told the legislature was
false.
Just a false premise, because the only way that these insurance companies can close that many claims that quick is to wrongfully close them to appease the insurance commissioner's office, because claims go on. They don't just start, they'll go on for 6 months, 9 months, a year.
They close them.
I had, the funny like, we had this claim practice case, bad faith case, go on against FedNat. And my client literally wrote an email saying, hey, don't close my file. We're not done. You haven't even paid me any contents yet. You said you weren't going to pay anything until I gave you the entire contents list. There's a number of things wrong with that are going on. First, you shouldn't be closing the claims file. Second, why not pay as you go along? If she wanted to, and where were you to go? How come you didn't send somebody out to adjust the contents and give her a check right away?
Right.
There were all kinds of wrong things going on, and for some reason, where's the insurance commissioner and the regulators on that? And they just haven't been there. And so there is a issue with respect to people getting abused by insurance companies in the state of Florida, and maybe the concern is, well, we're afraid to do anything to these insurance companies because they're just going to leave the state, or they're having a tough time making profits as it is, so we're just going to let them run roughshod over people. And so we're getting a lot of one-way regulation, going on, not protecting the policyholder, but instead trying to protect the insurance company. And our legislature is to be congratulated for passing a statute that shouldn't have been needed to begin with, because our insurance commissioner won't do anything about it.
What can we do? What can we do on our end? Public adjusters watching, contractors watching. What is it that we can do on our end?
Participate in our democracy. Know who your elected official is. Participate in the election, tell them what you do for a living, this blah, 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 and this is how I go about doing it. If you have the money, you want to support them, and make certain that they're fully knowledgeable about what's going on and that you're engaged.
I don't necessarily think you have to go all the way up to Tallahassee. It's a pain in the neck to get to Tallahassee.
I don't
Our
like
state
Tallahassee
capital,
either.
if it was in Orlando, would be so much better because it'd be more centrally located for everybody.
Right.
You know, it was only in Tallahassee because it's centrally located between, you know, Pensacola and
Apple.
Jacksonville 100 years ago, 120 years ago. So, you know, I go up there all the time, but I would encourage people to participate. I think it's good to participate with the Florida, if you're a public adjuster, participate with the Florida Association of Public Insurance Adjusters. If you're a contractor, you should be participating with your Contractors Association, because the truth is there's more power when you combine interest and you do get and pay for some professional lobbyists that you might not be able to do individually, but you can do collectively, you know, together. So, and I would encourage, you know, public adjusters and contractors to do as much as they can that way, because if not, the insurance industry, I mean, they've got more money than God.
Yeah.
They do.
Well, I
they have
heard
a sea of lobbyists up there.
there was a CEO of a famous red insurance company that was paid up, I heard $24 million or something last year.
Well, you know, they get paid. There's a lot of money that's being paid.
Plus all the Super Bowl commercials, plus they got to pay Chris Paul, and they got to pay the other guy, right, on all those commercials, Aaron Rodgers, right? It's like,
I mean, but none of that's illegal.
No, I
That's
know, but
it's perfectly legal.
why are they the most
difficult?
difficult ones? They are the most difficult ones.
You know,
You don't have to answer that.
I don't know, it's kind of a weird thing to say that, you know, some of the insurance companies I am concerned about in the state of Florida were taking very hardline stands, I think, because they just didn't have the cash to pay. And I actually felt sorry for some of those adjusters. I don't like seeing insurance companies go broke. I want them to be profitable. I want them to be fairly profitable.
Right.
I've been a critic of some of the management contracts that allowed some of the investors to pull out, you know, monies from those Florida-based companies during the good years when we weren't having hurricanes, and we should have been building up more surplus. It's not, and that's a different issue than, you know, what's going on with respect to all the litigation and the other things. But it's a very complex issue that we've got in our Florida marketplace. Mm-hmm. And but it's one that I'm seeing increasingly, you know, issues about if you live in the Midwest where we have hail damage. I mean, those hail damage storms seem to be getting more ferocious with bigger hail balls and more frequent. Yep. And so there's a hail issue there, and the insurance companies are changing their policies and providing less coverage with respect to hail. Mm-hmm. In the wildfire areas of Colorado and California, we have insurance companies that aren't selling insurance, and so there's how do we get an insurance marketplace for wildfires? You know, the same way that in California they had problems with earthquakes and they couldn't get earthquake coverage, and for the southeast and along the eastern seaboard and the Gulf of Mexico, you know, flood insurance. You know, how do we get flood insurance? And so there is no free lunch,
right?
And insurance. Eventually, you know, frequency, the number of claims you have times the average amount paid on claims, that's a number that's got to get met, plus the overhead, plus a fair profit, and everything else that insurance companies have to pay to stay in business.
Right.
And, you know, it can make insurance much more expensive, but if that's what the cost is socially, well, that's kind of the cost of having home ownership no matter where you're at.
Right.
And I think, you know, we need to have more honest discussion, you know, from our elected officials that are insurance regulators about that with homeowners, and that usually starts at the time you first purchase a building, that there is this additional cost for insurance. If you can't afford the insurance, you can't afford the house,
right,
or the structure, or whatever it is.
Right.
So, you know, I'm concerned about that, and without that type of understanding and appreciation for, you know, insurance, it's the only other thing you can do is cut the coverages, and that's not good for anybody.
Chip, let's switch gears a little bit. A lot of people don't know that you were the representing attorney for the Surfside building that collapsed in Miami. What was it? Was it a year ago now? It was when I was in Alaska.
A little over a year.
Just over a year ago.
Yeah. So I was one of a number of attorneys.
Oh, okay.
This is a dream team collection of attorneys, a dream team judge, mediators, even the defense counsel were some of the best defense counsel in the United States. And I'm not doing personal injury work. Obviously, I really focus on insurance coverage issues, and that's all I do. But the class counsel asked if I would get involved as their coverage counsel for the class of victims, which is a little bit different for me, because now all of a sudden I'm looking at liability policies and big liability policies, and policies that are contractor liability policies. And it's not that it's that much different, but it's different enough, and the law is a little bit different with respect to making claims, where there's coverage for the third parties that caused the accident. And of course, I was in bed. I got a phone call from an engineer that was on the task force, one of the first responders out there, and it was horrible from what everybody indicated. And the first things that most people were talking about is, well, those owners, they just weren't taking care of their property and they let everything fall apart, and that's what happened. And that's kind of a weird thing. Buildings just don't fall down in the United States. We have all kinds of rules and regulations about maintenance and upkeep, of them, and we have engineers to go out there. There's other professionals that are, supposed to, look at buildings and, how did this all happen? So, it's really an unbelievable tragedy, that happened to the victims, and still, sends, shivers up and down. But, there's obviously accountability for what happened, and the question is, who and how this all happened. And I was honored to be asked, to do this. I found it academically stimulating because the people that I was working with were really dedicated attorneys that are working all hours of the day and night and the weekends, and it was fun in a weird way. I believe people say, I had a blast doing this and working, trying to go through various coverage issues that were coming up, and the insurance companies on the defense side, of course, they don't want to pay if they don't have to, and the sums of money that we were talking about were huge, and they also keep coming back, well, they weren't taking care of the building, and well, I don't represent the association. I was representing the class of individuals who were either living there or a guest there, who got killed or maimed, or who lost their homes.
It's not their problem.
And it really wasn't their problem, but I wanted to help the association counsel. And the receiver that was appointed for the association, he's an all-star too, and their attorneys were all-stars, and they appointed some great coverage counsel for the association that I frankly worked hand in hand with, because we had a common interest to go get as much money as we can for everybody that's a victim of this. And to say that it got done in less than a year, that just
I got claims that have been open for 3 or 4.
I got claims in small claims court.
Yes.
We can't get done in a year.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous that our legal system moves so slowly. As a matter of fact, I think from the policyholder's perspective, in our viewpoint, when we're in jurisdictions that don't move along their cases fast, it almost prompts the insurance companies to take, well, what the heck? You either take this or we'll see you in 4 years from now before you get any of the money. That's the worst legal system we have. We as lawyers need to do better and speed up the resolutions that we can get in the day.
Yes, please.
Whatever we can do. I hear it all the time. As a matter of fact, a year ago, our firms, within our own firm, our training was, what can we do to make our experts and our expert witnesses better, and hire the best expert witnesses, and how do you handle expert witnesses, and everything about expert witnesses. This year, our point of emphasis has been on what can we do to speed up the resolution of the claims for our clients. And we've been working really, really hard on that, but we can only do so much. First we have to get the insurance company on board with this. The second thing is we got to get the judges on board with this. So in the Champlain Towers, that judge was the best. Just the best. No nonsense, polite, gentlemanly, but no nonsense. We're going to move this along. He set the tone from the very beginning. I want this case to be in trial and within a year. and he held us to it. I mean, he pushed the matter along. So if somebody wasn't going to have a witness show up, and I mean, he wanted witnesses to be, depositions to be done instantaneously. He wanted insurance policies to be turned over. He wanted to know, if you have an issue, I want to know what the issue is. He set deadlines like no other judge I've just been about in front of, setting deadlines, and we were fortunate we had such great attorneys to work with. I mean, some really specialized people doing this. One of the counsel from Philadelphia does nothing other than collapse claims of buildings. So it really was a neat, way to watch, our legal system work at its finest, and we got it all done.
It's amazing.
I think, and as we speak right now, some of the clients are going through their individual little presentations about what their individual claims can be worth, because they've got to still divide all that up. But that's being done in a manner that is not going to, I think, cause more trauma. I mean, because it's every single time people have to go through this, the trauma is revisited.
Right.
And it's rare that I think I see just such good legal work from so many different aspects, and that's the reason why it's finished the way it has finished. And I think everybody can be proud of our Florida justice system for that particular case and the people participating in it. I even think the insurance defense attorneys participating in it, and there's just so many really great people that did it. This wasn't Chip Merlin. I played my role in it, but this was a big production that it's great when you see things really work out.
That's awesome. It reminds me a lot, I guess, of the 9/11 case, right? Would it be compared to that a little bit, where you had the people?
That's still dragging on. Of course,
right.
If you think about that was quite a bit different, and there were
acts of terror not usually covered.
Acts of terror not covered, but a lot of it, there was also government money that was placed into it, and the insurance industry also wanted to have its subrogation interest protected as well too. So it's that and that's still going on, as a matter of fact.
Ridiculous.
I mean, it's still going on, and it's been 20 years now. So ours won't be going on.
Right. That's fantastic.
It's really amazing what we were able to do.
Chip, you mentioned 40 years.
So yeah, in 1982 at this time, I was working at this time in 1982, where I was working as a law clerk for a property insurance defense firm that Paul Butler headed up. It eventually became known as, was Paul B. Butler and Associates, and we had 6 attorneys. When I joined, I guess I was the 7th attorney, and eventually became Butler Burnett, Wood and Freeman, eventually became Butler Pappas, was what is known for a long time, until John Pappas retired. But that was where I started doing this. I was I did my undergraduate work in 2.5 years. I didn't like hanging around in school, and I wanted to find a place that would allow me to get out of the library and actually do legal work. And they made that promise and really came through. So I was able to start working on cases under Paul with boilers blowing up, satellite, issues, cases all over the country. And
so I was always property damage?
Always property damage, so
okay.
Yeah. And there was a period of time that in my law firm that I had some people that were doing personal injury work, but I would stick on the coverage side. I might have to go down there and help try a case out, but I was not the personal injury attorney.
Usually see both. Yeah, usually in a large law firm, they do both. I've noticed.
Yeah, and our firm had grown, and I kept getting referrals for personal injury, even though I kept wanting to do, really first party. So there was a brief period of time that I had a partner for about 3 years, and that didn't work out, and he was primarily doing the personal injury part from 2000 2003. But
so you said in 1982 you were working.
I was a clerk, so I worked, and then I got out of law school in 1982, and I worked doing insurance defense until February of 1985. I had a client that I won a couple telephone rate cases for and from the Public Service Commission. We had administrative trials that we won somehow, and so that client was thrilled with me and helped set me up with my own law practice, and I just switched over and started doing first-party property work, and I got referrals from Ira Saracen, the late Ira Saracen, and one from Dick Tutwiler right away, and off I went on my first-party insurance career as a punk 26-year-old attorney in 1985. So I've been representing policyholders since then. And eventually started, expanding. So now we've got about 40 attorneys throughout the United States with 12 offices.
Was when you were 26 and you started the Merlin Law Group?
Yeah.
With a partner who was doing personal injury?
I didn't have any partners. I started with a table that, literally with the client had built out an office, but we didn't have any furniture, and so literally it was like, what do you call those, bricks with some plywood there,
right,
and a chair. And starting that way, I mean, it was very maybe foolish to start off, practicing law that way. And but it all worked out. I think, like a lot of small business people, it all works out, and eventually, slowly but surely, kept gaining traction and more work throughout. And in 2004, we had those hurricanes that happened here in Florida. But I was already doing cases in other jurisdictions, but the year following that, Katrina hit, and I was up in Mississippi half the time, as a result of that, and that's when we started really branching out to other states and doing work much more outside the state of Florida. Most of my work now is outside the state of Florida.
Interesting.
And I'm licensed, I think, in 12 different states.
You have to take the bar for all those states?
So I had to take the full bar in 4 different states, and it's crazy.
Wow.
California, Florida, New Jersey, and Mississippi. And it's the one in Mississippi that gets me reciprocity almost with everybody else. Which is kind of a crazy
weird
thing. So, but Florida, California, and New Jersey just don't give any reciprocity to anybody, so they don't get anything back. But I enjoy the practice in different play. And I like traveling. I grew up as a kid traveling, and I get to see a lot of different type of losses and how laws vary from state to state. It's a lot to keep up with, but if you don't mind the travel in this business, and it allows me to go to where the game is being played, so to speak. Where's the most outrageous losses going on from a hurricane, from wildfires, from earthquakes, to whatever's going on. And I've been able to go up to New York, and I think I spent 260 something days at the Red Bank Marriott, Courtyard Marriott up there. And I got to see all of New York City, during that time after Superstorm Sandy.
Right.
And
that's where we started the APA, was as a result of that one.
Yeah.
Because of all the fraud that went on there.
Yeah, Doug Quinn actually ended up being, I kind of forgot about that, but Doug he hired another law firm up there, and that law firm was having some issues, and their clients, like 600 of them, then came over to our law firm, Doug being one of them, and it was right at the time when we then started getting some really good settlements with respect to national flood, and because of all the things that that happened up there regarding the fraudulent engineering practices.
I'll never forget that 60 Minutes report. I mean, I'll never forget that thing. Yeah. That they were just talking about all these fraudulent engineering reports. I couldn't believe it.
Well, unfortunately, that's been an issue. I mean, that was the issue in Hurricane Katrina. I think some of the more recurrent issues that we see much more often than changed engineering reports without the engineer's consent are the changed estimates that are going on, so that the field adjuster will write one estimate, and then without any transparency or honesty, the desk adjuster will change the numbers. And that's a big issue.
I've lost count. I mean, it's not like that. That's just fraudulent. But I've lost count at the amount of independent adjusters that reach out to me on social media, say they're sick and tired of working as an IA, and anytime they put an estimate together, the adjuster calls them back and says, you need to take this out.
Yeah,
They're
it's
tired of it.
unfortunate. It actually ended up having, in the Texas Windstorm Association, some of the executives, were criminally charged with having and mandating that those changes took place because they were ripping off Texas Windstorm, and that customers, and that was after Hurricane Ike. Why it doesn't go on more often is beyond me. I think part of Doug Quinn's mission is to, yes, those people should be criminally prosecuted.
Right.
They're essentially reaching into people's pockets and taking money away that should be going to them as a result of these wrongful acts. It's every bit as fraudulent as somebody, that's burning down their building or taking a hammer to their roof and intentionally destroying it to get insurance money. Both are wrong, but it only seems that the authorities seem to only go after policyholders rather than the insurance companies. But we know this is a systemic problem right now, just because so many independent adjusters are sick and tired of the desk adjusters changing their numbers.
Well, Doug was the first one. Doug and APA were the first time where I heard the term insurer fraud.
Right.
Or just insurance fraud. As soon as you tell somebody about insurance fraud, the first thing they think of is, somebody going up with a hammer and breaking something like that. But no, insurance fraud works on both ways, and it's very prevalent on the other side as well.
It happens. We're involved with cases all over the country, and and I won't say most of them have, fraud. They don't, but when it shows up, it can really show up in just very clandestine way. A report that's not issued, a report that's written in a certain way with a wink and a nod. Well, maybe nobody will ask about it. One of the classic ones was a engineer who wrote a hail damage report, and I said, well, what about, and he said there's no hail damage, and I said, well, what about at the very top, all the shingles are just blown away up there. Why don't you have any of that down there? And he goes, because I was asked for a hail report, not a hailstorm report. If they'd asked me for a hailstorm report, I would have reported about the wind damage that happened. Instead, I only reported about the hail. And you gotta be kidding me, And, things like that are just, and don't get me wrong, most adjusters, I don't think, conduct themselves that way. I think most people in the insurance field with insurance companies know that that's wrong, and that type of conduct wouldn't be tolerated. Sometimes people get these crazy ideas about doing things, and they try to justify them, but it's really criminal because you're ripping people off.
Exactly. Chip, you want to tell us about your books or your new book? I read Pay Up, but I have not.
So I got Pay Up, and you've read that one.
I've read that one.
It's got some great stories.
Yep.
If nothing else, it'll put you to sleep. But
it's good for the nightstand,
So when I was talking with Forbes Books about doing that book, I reached an agreement with them about having a publication that would be done involving a sailboat that I bought called Merlin. And this boat was, I didn't name this 70-foot boat Merlin. It was named by its boat designer in 1977 when it was first built. Bill Lee had this idea that if you build a sailboat for ocean racing that's very, very light, ultra light displacement boat, that it'll float better, like a ping pong ball float better than a brick. And it should allow the boat to go much faster. And he was right. The downside is, for a lot of people, they thought it was extraordinarily dangerous. And
only fly? Okay.
You're going to kill people. The boat's
too light.
He got a lot of criticism from people that thought that a lightweight boat out on the open ocean is going to end up upside down, and it's going to capsize, and people are going to drown. And it was what he was doing was almost tantamount to a criminal, act of manslaughter, just about, by allowing that to happen. But instead what happened was the boat set a record, and it stood for 20-something years, and then it changed the way sailboats, on ocean racing sailboats, have been designed ever since, that, they do float better out there with lightweight, and they do go faster. And still to today, that's how ocean racing sailboats, and all sailboats are typically designed. So I first read about the boat when I was in college in a Sports Illustrated article, and it would talk about how some of the shape was designed only because of the parameters was built in a chicken coop. I mean, how many boats get built in a chicken coop? And so they had to turn it over, and they didn't have enough money to almost finish it, so it had to be light in a way. But and by this yacht designer is kind of a hippie. It was built out in the Monterey area, and it goes out and wins the race, and just shows everybody that they're wrong. And so the book Maverick really came back because Bill Lee is a maverick that way, and part of it was I grew up. My father was in the Coast Guard. I grew up sailboat racing. I loved sailboat racing as a kid, and I promised myself when I was 19 years old, if I ever had a chance to buy that boat, I would. And it came up for sale in 2017, and off I go and went and bought it, and now I'm racing it. And so I decided to write some of the second book. And while it says it's really about sailboat racing.
I was going to say, is it about sailboat racing, or is it about claims?
It's also about some of the life and some of the lessons I think that I've learned over the last 40 years. And so it's I think it's a much better read. Almost everybody who talks about it says, Chip, this is a great book. You ought to think about writing some more about that. And,
nice. Is it for sale yet?
It's for sale. It's on Amazon.com.
Awesome.
You can go get it and get your audio book if you want, and you can get it in the Kindle edition. You can go get it anyway, and I've got one for you that I signed, I think.
That's it.
Here, and this is for you.
Thank you.
So, but I think it's a good book. It's fun. I'm looking forward to. I'm going to go race Merlin in the Rolex Big Boat Series out in San Francisco.
Cool.
So I can visit my San Francisco office as well as go out there, and we're actually having it's going to for auction for United policyholders, just to take some people out anytime they want to, just to help raise some more money for United policyholders. And yeah, it's fun. I like my sailboat racing, and that boat's the big one.
That's fantastic. I mean, we're pretty much out of time. I wanted to get into, I guess I'm just going to thank you for the Merlin blog. I mean, it's been around for how long now?
16
Ever since
years.
I can remember, 16 years.
Now.
We started a YouTube channel because I felt like starting a blog would never work. But you managed to start a blog that is constantly, to this day, always being referred to. Always new stuff. Do you write in that thing every day, pretty much? I
write. Yeah, a lot of people ask me, do you do this yourself? Do you write it? Yeah, when it says my name, I write it.
Yeah.
We obviously have other people in the law firm write, and we have guest bloggers come on, but more than 50% of everything there, probably 75 or 80% is me writing. And I usually, people ask, how do you come up with the ideas? And we read cases,
just every
we're working
day.
on this. I mean, what I'm working
Sure.
on a lot is what we write or what we find that's coming along, and because of that, and writing for this long, it's a really great research tool for people. So if you want to know about matching, I mean, we must have 50 articles about matching in there. If your name will pop up,
right?
Your education.
Yeah.
So it's it's something that I enjoy doing. I think it does help out public adjusters and
Definitely.
contractors and policyholders as well.
And attorneys as well.
Other attorneys read it. A lot of defense attorneys tell me that we know, we can even see what home offices of various insurance companies, from the Google Analytics. You can.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I guarantee you that people in Bloomington, Illinois, that are reading it aren't, it's not the farmers out there that are reading it.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a great search tool, and also I get a lot out of it. I found that when I teach people, it makes me learn the subject matter better. I get then feedback from other individuals, a lot of private notes back and forth. It generates a lot of discussion in a field that this is what I've dedicated my adult life to doing. So I get, while a lot of people thank me for it, I think I get more out of it by just doing it.
You feel like you learn more from the people who actually read it. They learning from you, but then when they give you their comments and their idea or opinion, whatever, you're just like, oh wow.
Well, you have to, because you have to write your thought. You know, I'm forced to write my thoughts down about.
But they're only your thoughts.
What they are, but I have to learn it, and then I have to explain it in a certain way, and then other people come back with other comments about it. So it's, you know, that's one reason why in speaking, I probably speak 25, 30 times a year. I always feel like I get more out of it, you know, at least I try to. I try to do a good job to keep people educated, but I do believe I get much more out of it. It makes me a better attorney and lawyer for my clients.
Well, Chip, I want to thank you for taking the time out. Thank you so
Vince,
much.
Congratulations on what you're doing for everybody else. I applaud you. I think this is fantastic, and I'm looking forward to I'm actually, for everybody, I'm going to go buy his book. I think you should too, for $47. You're crazy not to have that, you know, reference material there, and good luck on all your educational sessions you're having now too. I think it's needed in the industry.
Well, I'm only taking after you. I mean, you've been giving back to the community for so long. I think people are very grateful for it, and I just want to thank you for all that you do for us in the public adjusting side. You've always been an advocate for us, obviously for the policyholders and just for the entire community. I really do appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you.
All right, Chip. Thank you.